Oh man, it is so good to have you on a call at a time like this. Honestly, we
Mm.
we we weren't expecting something like this to happen. So obviously, we know with coronavirus, COVID-19 happening, this call couldn't have happened at a better time. I'm getting a lot of people that are afraid, a lot of people that are confused, a lot of people that don't quite know how to handle this. Even people that typically are in a community like this that say, "I know the principles, but." Right? I know the principles, but this is different. And so I thought in, it'd be timely to discuss with everything that's happening, your thoughts around this right now with what's happening with this global pandemic and maybe a little bit of word of advice for navigating this. So um, before we begin, if if for those that don't know, this is Dr. Bill Pettit, someone that I absolutely love in our community, someone that's been in this for how long? How many years now, Bill?
37 plus.
Okay,
I met,
37
I met,
plus.
I sat with a group of people on April Fool's Day in 1983 and listened to Sid Banks with about 200 other people in San Francisco. And within 20 minutes, I knew that this man knew more, 1,000 times more about mental well-being than I did with my 26 and a half years of schooling and my 900 lectures on mental illness.
And your background is in is it psychotherapy?
Psychiatrist. I was a physician.
Psychiatrist.
I was a Navy flight surgeon during, I got drafted during Vietnam and was a family physician for a squadron of naval aviators and their wives. And I'd been 2 years of general surgery residency prior to that before I got drafted. So I was a doctor for 5 years before I went into psychiatry because I started to realize how much people's state of mind, their mental well-being, myself included, had to do with our immune system and our ability to live in a healthy body. And if there was ever a time that peace of mind was important to our immune system, it's right now.
Yeah, so
So that, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say, can you speak to that a little bit about, I mean, so what are your thoughts as far as, what you're seeing would be the best way to handle something that's a global pandemic such as this? Does anything change as far as what you teach, what you share with something like this? Do we take a different course, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think that I'm in a place to tell people what to do and what, because except to go toward, either we, let's see, let me get quiet. Let me stay quiet here. What we will do is always, what anybody does is based on their level of understanding, because their level of understanding determines what they see when they look out at the world. And it's hard to talk about this without people thinking that you're in judgment, and I have no judgment. We're all doing literally the best that we know how to do. But I'm sure many people have heard me say that when I feel emotional pain, I kind of get excited because I know that I'm up against my level of understanding up to this point. Because Amir, it's not just a belief for me. I know that the only person, place, or thing that can cause me emotional pain is inside the same underbritches I'm in. And the last I looked, there's only room for me. So if I truly know that, if I just believe it, beliefs get shaken. When people say, I really understand the principles, but I'm worrying, I really understand them. I've been studying them I really understand these principles, these universal principles of mind, thought, and consciousness. but I'm worrying about 5 hours a day these days. I'm worrying about my children, my grandchildren, I'm worrying, okay? Then I kind of quietly say, you know, as people can see, I have a big glass of water here. I say, how many times in the past week have you forgotten to put your glass of water on the table? That you've just let go of it out here and then had a mess all over you with coffee or water or whatever it was. And people will say, no, that hasn't happened in the last week. And I say, well, in the last month? Well, no, in the last 6 months, last year? No. Why? Because I know gravity. You mean you believe in gravity? No, I know gravity. How many times have you gotten out, been late for a meeting and got, as a result, instead of taking the elevator or the stairs, because you knew it was quicker and the meeting was down the block, a half a block, how many times have you gone out the third store window of a motel or a hotel? Well, I haven't done that. Well, why? Well, because I know gravity. I know the consequences. So it's okay not to know. People, it's important for people to know that. We're going to be, when we say we don't know, what we're saying is that we haven't seen something yet. Everything we haven't seen is in the divine thought system. It's just that we haven't transferred the files yet to our personal thought system. And that's okay. You know, Sid, two thoughts come to mind. Sid said, and we can pick a time. What is our total time? Just so I'm respectful of people, because I want to leave time for questions, and I
Yeah.
appreciate. Is our total time 75 minutes, 90 minutes?
We can do, if you have 75 minutes, we can do 75. Typically it's an hour, but I think right now we're going to go through this quick. So let's if we go over, we go over.
So I'm going to aim for 30, and knowing me, if I aim for 30, I'll stop at least by 40. And if I get even close to that, you can give me a nudge, because I want to leave, that would leave still 50 minutes or 35 minutes. And I'm going to try to do 35 and 35 minutes and 40 minutes for questions. You know, Sid, and I know I'm talking to the choir here. I'm not giving any new information. I know that. My best thing is I'll be reminding people of what they already know, you know? Sid used to say, if you strive for perfection, you will fail miserably. You'll fail miserably. We're human beings. On the other hand, he also said, we're going to get viruses. That was another way of him saying that. We're going to get psychological viruses, he talked about. But we've got a virus detector, you know? And just like they're talking about the coronavirus, you know, and some of them there's an overlap, but especially that's why they take temperatures of people. That temperature is one thing, and it starts out with a dry cough, and there's different signs of physical virus. Well, the wonderful thing is, and in my course, I'm going to be talking about that related to the body, and then in the summer, now that my trips were canceled to England and to Sweden and to London, in the summer I'm going to do the course on the psychiatric and psychological symptoms and quote labeled disorders seen through the eyes of the three principles. Because what we call symptoms, physical symptoms and psychological symptoms, are love letters from Universal Mind. Now, that's been an evolution for me in terms, and I'm fine with these days. Often in my writing, I put a name, a word, and then a forward slash, and another word, and a forward slash, so people can take their choice of what resonates most for them. Sid used to say that. He'd say, if you don't like the words that I use, then put your word in place of my word. And as long as it points you to more understanding or to a nicer feeling, the words are irrelevant. The words are the best I can do to point to something. But if you keep looking at my finger and saying you don't like my finger, because that's what the words are, you're not going to see what I'm pointing to. Any more than if you, Amir, we were walking at dusk and you saw a windmill and I didn't, and if you pointed, say, well, Bill, I'll point to it. If I kept looking at your finger, I wouldn't see what you were pointing to. I would have very little chance of seeing the windmill. So at first I used to call these symptoms alarms. And they are alarms. And then I saw that they were information, a little gentler. That's a little gentler than an alarm, isn't it? It's information. And then I woke up the morning in early November when I spoke at the Viva conference on the mind-body connection. And as I was in the shower, I suddenly had this thought that came to me. Yeah, they're alarms, especially if you get them later or if it's needed right now. And yeah, they're information, but they're really love letters. They're love letters that you would give to anybody that you cared for to help them avoid further pain and go in the direction of healing. And so, to me, so to some people, you've probably heard me say this, but to me, the virus detectors that we have are at least fourfold, and you can, and I'm going to say even fivefold. And three of them are internal. In psychiatry and in psychology, we talk about internalizing disorders and externalizing disorders. And you can tell by those words, even those of you that aren't in the psychiatry field, that internalizing disorders would be towards things that you're internally experiencing. So a lot of people these days are experiencing anxiety. Externalizing, in the simplicity, would be what people do when they're innocently creating internal dis-ease. Then what do they do to try to relieve or get away from the internal dis-ease? So you get a whole myriad, right, of solutions, everything from lines of cocaine to a bottle of vodka to eating and puking to going on a spending spree when you don't have it, to gambling, to gosh knows we've had a number of, in the last years, I've known a number of young people that have flunked out of college because they dealt with their anxiety with gaming 14, 16 hours a day, not leaving any time for them to study their material that they were taking. So the three internalizing alarms, information, love letters that we get, one is our mood. I'm just hypothetically say that, and I've had people in my practice when I was in active practice of psychiatry tell me that they were awake 17 hours a day, 18 hours a day, and that at least 16 and a half to 17 of those hours they were in some form of stressful thinking. Worry, guilt, resentment, upset, overanalysis, unresolved grief, drivenness, trying to prove themselves. So, and other people, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, a whole range, depending on their level of understanding. And what they were dealing with externally. So let's take a person that is spending 4 to 5 hours a day these days in some form of worry or upset about what's happening in the world externally. And I know a lot of people who, and you do too, I bet, Amir, who generally are pretty calm, who are having trouble right now. Now, I would say that they're being given an opportunity to see something new. And that the world is actually getting an opportunity to see something new. I mean, I'm going to go on a tangent here just for a minute or two. You know, if 6 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago, you had the people all around the world, you had the young woman from, was she from Norway, Greta, saying, folks, we've got to do something drastic. We've got to curtail hugely our use of fossil fuel. Here we are 8 weeks later. I don't know the statistics. If anybody does, maybe they could chat. I'll bet our use of fossil fuel has been reduced by 80%. Because there's an incredible reduction of flights, there's an incredible reduction of car emissions. At most big cities, there's very few cars. Now, I'm just saying that, and it's not some people make this up as that there's some vengeful intelligence. And I'm suggesting, and always will, in my experience, that what I'm calling universal mind is beneficent. It's beneficent. And it's respectful of our free will. But when you think about it, I was thinking about this, and that individually, we have our own body. Collectively, on Earth, we have another body. It's called Earth. So if I want to drink a fifth of whiskey a day and smoke 4 packs of cigarettes, very few countries can anybody not have the freedom to do that. I suppose there are some. But I have the freedom to drink a fifth of vodka a day and smoke 4 packs of cigarettes and worry 8 hours a day. But if I do that, my body is going to try to keep waking me up and saying that you're going the wrong direction. Not in a mean way, but just saying, no, I care about you, and you're heading down a one-way street the wrong way, and this is not going to work out well for you. So I think that we have the free will collectively to destroy this planet. I think that same intelligence is saying, I love you, I have understanding, I'm trying to respect your free will, but I'm going to try to let you know that you're heading the wrong way. And I'm trying to, just like you would, if I see some of the ladies on here that are smaller ladies and maybe only weigh 125 pounds, if they saw a 230-pound old guy like me running into the street and was going to get hit by a bus, and I'm running after a ball that my grandchild threw into the street, and they have yelled at me, but I'm lucky enough right now, my hearing is still pretty good, but let's say I didn't hear them, I could see them desperately, because they could see the bus bearing down, that I am going to get killed, throwing their 125-pound body at my legs, even though they might incur a broken arm or a broken wrist, out of compassion to try to stop me from my total destruction. I feel like that's part of what's happening right now. So back at an individual level, and stop me at any time, Amir, please feel
Well,
free.
Bill, you know what came to me, and I never really saw this, but you know, I work at a recovery center, and you're right. When someone ingests substances or smokes a lot, you know, they're polluting their factory, their body, right? And in a way, it's like this is a universal factory that we keep. You know, it's like
Right.
I'm actually at a recovery. We're all at a, that's what we call it, recovering. We're trying to recover from the pandemic. But what we're saying is we're recovering from what's actually happening, which is we're poisoning ourselves on a global level, not on a personal level. And I actually just saw that for the first time, that
Oh,
instead of sitting at my recovery center, I'm sitting here and we're all sitting here together talking to each other in the world saying, hey, we all have to wake up, not just the people in one small room.
there's a global intervention.
Global intervention, beautiful. That's right. That's what a pandemic means. Yeah, right. That's
The
correct. A global
global intervention.
intervention.
Yeah,
That's right.
the global intervention. Yeah, because I hear people say, "Well, what kind of a mind would cause this much pain for people?" And that's not the purpose of it. It's trying to wake us up. If I accidentally put my hand on a burner on a stove that's been left on and I didn't notice it, and you and I got talking, and let's say it's at my home and I had inadvertently forgot to turn, and one of us puts our hand down on that burner, we are very, very glad that it hurts really bad and it hurts really fast. Because it does, because it hurts really bad and really fast, we pull our hand off very rapidly and we minimize the tissue damage to our hand because of our rapid response and the pain that we felt. Does that resonate? I see some nods. So let me go back to my three internal. So one of the things, this person, this hypothetical person that's worrying and upset in judgment about what's happening, and it's innocent. No, don't hear judgment. But I'm just talking about if I put my glass, let go of it over here versus here. There's things that are going to happen. So what's going to happen if I'm in upsetting thinking 5 hours a day? My mood. We're going to go mood, the three internal: mood, level of tension, and thought, clarity of thought. I don't think I'm going to get any arguments on this. Does anybody believe that with 5 hours of stressful thinking that my mood is going to get more lighthearted and joyful? No. I'm going to lose my lightheartedness. If I've already lost it before, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. The end road of that, if a person continues there, is that they get isolated, feel isolated in incredible pain and tormented. And they're angry, and the only choices they have are either to kill themselves or to take other people with them when they do it. Those are the two choices they see. And God, your heart just aches when you read that in the paper. Number two, anxiety. Our level of tension is going to go up. I don't think anybody would argue that 5 hours of stressful thinking, the person's going to feel calmer, more serene, and think, boy, this is even better than yoga. I don't think so. Or mindfulness or qigong. I don't think so. I think they're going to experience more and more and more anxiety. And my good friend Dickon Bettinger, what a beautiful man and what a humble man to say, before I learned the principles, I used to have to meditate. I got to where I had to meditate up to 4 hours a day to contain my anxiety that I was innocently creating with my thinking. It takes a humble man to say that, but also a man who's filled with gratitude that he's been allowed to see something where that's not the case now. So we've got mood, we've got tension. And the third one is our quality of our thinking. Quality of our thinking. Is there anybody that would argue that in 4 to 5 hours of stressful thinking that you get more clarity, more access to wisdom, more seeing beyond the problem to the solution? I don't think so. I don't think so. I was reading earlier with a young man in Germany earlier this morning before this in a mentoring, and I told him, we were reading from The Missing Link, and even in the first chapter, and I told him a quote that had been shared by one of the people in our healers clinic this week, that of Einstein's, and I love Einstein and I love his quotes, but I never heard this quote. It's very simple. It's 3 lines. I stop thinking, swim in silence, and the truth comes to me. Wow. Sid never read Einstein. Einstein never read Sid. It's universal truth. What he's saying was, when I think you could preface it, when I'm lost, when I don't know what to do, where to go, I stop going to my personal thought system, what's stored in my brain, to find the answer. He made it simple. I stopped thinking, but that's what he's pointing to. I stopped going to my personal thought system, my stored information from how many years I've lived in this earth. And I swim in silence. Another way of saying that to me, people say, how do you swim in silence? It's very simple. You don't have to do anything. You just get present as best as you can. And that's what Einstein did. He would get present. I swim in silence. At the beginning, you might find things that you do that help you swim in silence. Some people do Qigong, or they do meditate, or they take a walk. But you'll eventually, most people eventually see you don't have to do anything. Just get present. And your mind will go to silence if you're not feeding it and fighting it. I love that statement, that to the degree people get comfortable with any experience they have. You know, Sid is quoted, I don't know where nobody can help me find the quote, but that if people just were not afraid of their experience, the world would change. And it goes along with what other people have said. If you have an experience, if you accept it, the experience, like even if you're having anxiety and you've been in the principles for 10 years, you know, yeah, okay, there's an opportunity here. I'm going to see something. If you don't resist it, if you resist your experience, you will have suffering. It's real simple. Experience without resistance will be passed through, and you will access the wisdom you need. As Einstein said, I swim in silence and the truth comes to me. You know, and it's so close, it's very interesting to the quote in Sid in the first chapter: in the silence of our minds lies creative incubation, bringing the wisdom and the joy we all seek. Not only the joy, but the wisdom, the guidance system. We have the divine thought system. I hear some people in the principles talk about it like it's a library that you can go to. It's a resource. I think that is a gross underrepresentation of the power of the divine thought system. It's not a resource. It is literally what we are made of. And our personal thought system, everybody's personal thought system, is part of the divine thought system because it has all the knowledge there is in the world. So of course it has whatever little bit of knowledge we've accumulated in my 77 years or 35 years or 45 years. It has everything. So those are the three internalizing things. And of course the ultimate thing with anxiety is people get to where they start having panic attacks. They start releasing norepinephrine to where they have panic attacks. They start having phobias. They start having literally dissociating. They have periods of 2 to 3 hours a day, twice a day, that where they're not conscious of what they're thinking. Well, people say, well, how could that be beneficial? Well, if you overload all the electrical systems in your house in the summer, what does the circuit breaker do? It shuts everything off. It says, Bill, until you can use electricity with a little common sense, you're not going to get any electricity. So let me know when you've got some common sense about electricity, and I'll let you have electricity back. At the thought system, people literally have to go to another world. They either have to kill themselves or they go to another world because the world they're creating in their head is so painful. And I could tell you, and I will in that course, I had a lady that ended up that in order not to kill her 2 little boys and her newborn baby, she eventually got to the delusion in the Christian tradition that she was the Blessed Virgin Mary and this was the baby Jesus. And there ain't no way the Blessed Virgin Mary is going to kill the baby Jesus. Ain't going to happen. And they found her with feces all over, urine all over, rocking the baby Jesus, singing religious songs to the baby Jesus. And some people will say, boy, that's really mental illness. Yeah, really? Okay. It saved 4 people's lives. It saved her from killing her 3 little boys and then herself. You know, the root of psychopathology is from the Greek. It means a suffering soul. Psychopathology. Psyche is the soul, the spiritual aspect of being human. Pathos is suffering. That's why compassion is the idea that you're suffering with a person. You have some, or at least some acknowledgement of the suffering that they're having. Psychopathology. Yeah, a suffering soul she was, but it saved 4 people's lives. So the other thing is that the body, I'm aware of the time, and I'm going to wrap it up here in 5 minutes. The body gives out alarms, and there's lots of mechanisms that I'm going to go into in the course that do this, but it lowers our pain threshold, so where we start getting pain in all parts of our bodies. Why? Because it's trying to wake us up. Now, the problem is if people don't have understanding, they say, Jesus, now I was worrying about this and now I've got back pain, or now I've got neck pain, or now I've got shoulder pain, or now I've got like fibromyalgia, pain all over my body. And now they start thinking about that. And it gets in a cycle. And then there's the external. The external things are, like I said earlier, you innocently, people start experiencing, they affect their immune system, so they start being more. I recently had a cold for almost 20 days. It was saying, Bill, what I heard was, Bill, slowing down to the speed of life is different at 77 than it is at 37. The speed of life is not the same. Okay, got it. Now, was that better than a massive heart attack or a stroke or a cancer? Yeah. But was it trying to wake me up? Uh-huh. And if anybody hears this and they already have chronic diseases or Or we had people on our healers clinic that are on chemotherapy and stuff. Boy, that's okay. It's okay. It's not about, it's like Elsie talks about the value of being able to take responsibility without the burden of blame or self-blame. I don't blame myself for the 21 years that I went in and out of clinical depression. I was doing the best I knew with what I saw at the time at the level of understanding that I was. One of my favorite metaphors is when we come out of the darkness into more light, we either have a choice of turning back into the darkness and lamenting all the things that we've knocked over and broken when we were in the darkness, or turning towards the light and being filled with gratitude that we can see a little clearer now. That's a choice. The last thing I'll say is I want to make this point. You can write these words down or not, but rocks, flowers, animals, and us. When Sid says, when the divine passes from formless to the form, on the early pages of The Missing Link, he says, when the divine passes from the formless to the form, and as human beings, we are both spectators and participants in this spiritual theater called life. I'm suggesting to you that rocks, flowers, and animals and us are all participants in the spiritual theater called life. Everything in the universe is the same energy. You know, a rock looked like there's nothing happening, but the physicists tell us that within every atom, there are electrons going 3/4 the speed of light. There's a lot of shit going on in that rock. Not only that, and people might know this more than I, that flowers or plants will send out chemical things to nearby, not only to the soil, but to rocks, and saying, by the way, if you have any of these trace elements, I'm really in need of them. And the rock releases the trace elements that plant is asking for. Because why? Because it's all part of the divine thought system. But I think unlike us, it doesn't know that it is, and it doesn't have a free will to say, I'm sorry, it's the weekend. Come back on Monday and I'll have those trace elements for you. Number two, you cover a flower bed over on every side and the top, and you leave one end open, and the flowers bend towards the light, so that not only do they get the light and survive, but it makes room for the flowers behind them, as many as possible, to get light and survive. And I kiddingly, some of you have heard me say this, even the adolescent flowers bend to the light. They don't fold their arms and say, make me. It's supposed to be a joke, guys. But I don't think the flowers know that they have a choice. And I don't think the flowers know what they are, that they're divine thought system in form. Animals, the same way. Animals, in our United States here, you could take 10,000 examples, but the whales go down every year to the Hawaiian Islands from off the coast of Canada, and they have their babies down there. And the men go along. I mean, who doesn't want to go to the Hawaiian Islands in the winter, right? And they have their babies, and they come back and they know how to get back to the Northwest there, and they have a song. Some of you, I bet, have heard the whales song. Here's the deal, folks. As I understand it, they come back every year with a different song. And they all have the same song. Even the adolescent ones that are coming back, they don't say, Dad, you know, that cruise ship, back when they used to have cruise ships, that's a bad joke, but the adolescent whale doesn't say, you know, that cruise ship that we went by, they were playing some hip hop. I think it was Tupac. I think I'm going with Tupac this year instead of that song that you guys learned down there. I don't think that happens. I don't think the whales either know their divine thought system in motion or that they have a choice. Here's the only difference, folks. we have the divine thought. We are the divine thought system, just like the rocks, the flowers, and the animals are. Only we've been given a free will, and we've been given a consciousness. The individual side of, for the individual side of consciousness is said is the soul. Those people that want to argue that we don't, we couldn't argue about it if we didn't have different sides of consciousness. You can't discuss something. And so the individual side of consciousness is the soul. The universal side of consciousness we call God, or universal mind. And when we are faced with the unknown, we either go to our intellect, to that little bit of knowledge that we've stored up in however many years we've lived, or we do what Einstein does. We stop thinking. We swim in silence, and the truth comes to us. And if there was ever a time that we needed to see that a little more, and remember, it's okay, we're on a journey. There's an infinite, Sid says, there's an infinite number of doors of understanding of these principles. Last I looked at my math book, that's a really big number. And it's okay not to know. The Chinese symbol for crisis is two symbols. One is danger, the other is opportunity. We've been given an opportunity we've been given an intervention, a global intervention. It's time to listen in silence, to swim in silence. So I'm going to stop there.
Beautiful, Bill. Wow. We could, I mean, we could end it here, but I don't want to because I know there's people that are going to have questions. Are you still okay for that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I'm fine on going for at least 30 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. So if
Sorry that.
anyone, no, this has been absolutely incredible and so timely for me especially as well. And just for those that are listening, we were supposed to do this earlier, and I did have a high fever and I was stuck in my room. And I messaged Bill and I said, Bill, we're going to have to postpone this. I'm really feeling ill. And he wrote back and said, what a wonderful time to reflect at a time like this. And he was absolutely right. With 103 degree or 104, I don't remember where I was. I was in my room and I had this deep appreciation for my body that it's heating up to make me better, and that it's making me sweat to release whatever's in my body, that it's making me want to vomit. And trust me, when I was in there, it didn't feel like
No, I hear you.
but at the same time I went, I'm not even requesting this. My body wants me to thrive. I'm not saying, please help me. Whether I want to or not, my body wants me to thrive. And that
Giving
to
you
me
an
was giving me, when you said love letter, I went, man, that hit me so
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
And so it was incredible to hear my body said, you're not going to be able to take care of yourself now, I will. And I don't know who that I was that was taking care of me, but it was regulating my body, regulating my my fluids, everything. It was incredible. So anyone want to jump on, feel free to just hit your uh, unmute yourself if you'd like, or go ahead and put your hand up on the participants if anyone has a question. Or if it's not even a question, if you want to jump in and just say something, we'd be happy to hear you as well.
Okay, I'll go.
Hey, Penny.
Hi, Omir. Hello, Bill. I'd really just to say thank you. I've had a really tough day today, and I knew this would reset me, and it has. And I love what hit me was I'm forgetting to swim in silence at the moment, and that's what I need to do.
Yeah. Good. That's beautiful, Penny. Where are you, Penny?
I'm in the UK.
UK? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. You know, I do have a couple questions that were given to us on my Facebook group.
Sure.
And you know, switching over to something this is something that I was actually interested in, is children with ADD. And this, it says, how would you explain the growing number of children with ADD? How can we best support the youth in their development towards a self-reliant, peaceful, and happy life? Why I think this is actually pertinent, the second part he said is, I read that most of the problems in child development come from negative and stressful family atmosphere and parents suffering from mental stress. Would you agree? And why I'm saying this is I'm seeing a lot of people at home, a lot of, I have a 4-year-old daughter, that the parents are extremely stressed out. And when you see the kids on like the Zoom calls, you can see that the kids are being affected. And so what are your thoughts with, I mean, ADD or anything like that with children, and how do we better navigate what's going on for our children at this time?
Okay. Well, again, I know that I'm not going to be saying anything new to people. I think I'm going to be reminding people. You know, I love that statement that the child says to the parent, I'm having trouble hearing what you're saying because the way you are speaks so loudly. And so the greatest gift that we have for our children is peace of mind. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, it's just the way it is. The greatest gift that we have. You know, Sid used to, if you remember, like even in the Long Beach videos, he said, if you're listening today and you're a teacher, please forget about your students. If you're a mental health professional and you have the thought, boy, this will help my clients, forget about your clients. Or if you're a coach, or if you're a parent, say, boy, this would really help my children, or this will really help my sister, or boy, if I could get my mother and father to listen to this. And I've seen so many of us try to do that with family members without permission. You can't teach if you don't have a student. So the simple answer is, and I will go to the ADHD thing, but the simple answer is the best gift that a parent has is their state of mind. Because what Sid's saying is, if love and understanding is the default setting, and that's what he says repeatedly. He even says, when he said, people, there's one thought away from mental well-being, and on one of the videotapes he says, and that one thought is love and understanding. And another place in The Missing Link, he says, when our level of consciousness drops, we go into envy and guilt and anger and resentment. And when it rises again, we return to what? We return to love and understanding. I will tell people something that I'd forgotten about. And Amir, I would refer this to people. Dr. George Pransky, and I think now that, of course, originally 30 years ago, they were on audio tapes, and then they went to CDs, and now they're downloadable. He has, even with 30 years old, if you go to Dr. Pransky's website, and if you have to, you can call him, but they have a course called Common Sense Parenting, and it is powerful. And basically it's saying any parenting you do that isn't from a state of mental well-being is not going to make things better. Now, again, none of us are perfect, and it's okay to apologize. But I have a close relative who had 4 little children who recently and it's been, you know, some around the principles but very real, you know, 4 young children, and that has been very, very powerful. It said it just reminded him, and it's called Common Sense Parenting, Dr. Pransky. It can be downloaded so people can listen to the podcast as they're vacuuming or doing whatever, driving or whatever in the car. So because every interaction with our children is is like every interaction with our mate or with our coworkers. I love Dr. Pransky's example in the relationship handbook, which is so powerful. And you know, Christine Heath and Lori Carpinos's book on relationships, The Secret to Love, or The Secret of Love, is also very powerful. But I'm obviously more familiar with Dr. Pransky's for all these years. And he says that every relationship, and it's true with our children, every interaction is like a bank account. To the degree that we listen and it ends up with it doesn't matter how the interaction starts, it matters how it ends. If any interaction we have with anybody, if it ends with a positive feeling, we've made a deposit. On the other hand, if it ends with ill will and untrust and upset, it's a withdrawal. And everybody knows enough about bank accounts that if you have more withdrawals than you do deposits, eventually the relationship is going to go bankrupt. And the other thing I'll say from being board certified in adolescent psychiatry is that oftentimes the children, the adolescents that got admitted to the unit with a suicide attempt or some acting out that was pretty dangerous or whatever that required them being hospitalized, they were sacrificing themselves for the family. At some level, they were shooting up a flare saying the family boat is sinking and we need help. And I'm not saying that was conscious, but so often, as you said, you when you get the parents in, the parents are bickering with each other, they're fighting, they've lost their own mental well-being. Again, no judgment. Without understanding. I mean, you know, gosh, my parenting changed when I came out of my depression because I was more available. I was able to be present more. I was able to listen with an open heart more and listen fully and completely to my children. So again, I say to parents when they start to see, and the relationship handbook, I might have said this before, I had over 100 adolescents read George Pransky's The Relationship Handbook, and every one of them except one said, this is the best book I've ever read in my entire life. And the one person said it was their second best book, one out of 100 and plus. And I think that's amazing, and you've probably heard me say it, because the Relationship Handbook, every example except two are married couples. But these adolescents saw that it was not about marriage, it was about relationships. So I'm going to then go over to the ADHD, but I want to leave room for you, Amir, if there's anything that you wanted to add to that, or is it okay to go to the ADHD?
No, go for it,
question,
go for it. We have a couple more questions, so, but go for it. I do want to get that ADHD.
Try to be more succinct. So, first of all, ADHD is not a disorder. It's a different processor. If anybody has seen Bill Gates's, and you know, I bet you could go on YouTube and find it, of board meetings from the mid-1980s. They're up, they're down, practically every member of the board nobody is sitting in their seat. They're up, they're down, they're sitting, they're sideways, they're over the top. Why? Because they all had ADHD, but they were brilliant and they could see outside the box that most of us are caught in. They were able to go beyond and to see things fast and not censor. There's a great little board game at a time when people are isolated. It's called Blurt. I suppose you could probably get it on Amazon. And if anybody has a child or a nephew or a niece that has ADHD that is tired of coming in last in games and life, this little game of blurt, you turn over a card and it'll say something like appendage in the middle of the face used for smelling. And of course the answer is nose, right? Well, myself and 2 other physicians and a PhD used to play this game with my daughter who has severe ADHD, and you could blurt out 4 wrong answers before you do the right one. It's the one that gives out the first right answer. She would blurt out 3 wrong answers and then the right answer before any of us had answered because her mind was so quick. And she would go all the way around and win the game. And myself and my physician friend and my other daughter, who got a master's degree from Stanford, would not even be around the first turn. And she graduated from high school with a 1.67 grade point average. She's brilliant, but she had trouble with attention. Now, all of us are, is there anybody here that has gotten really stressed, that even started wondering, do I have some attention problems? Because do we not all, when we get into a state of mental stress, start losing our attention, misplacing our keys, missing appointments, wondering where the TV remote is, where's that damn cell phone? Why? Because if you have any difficulty at all with that, it's going to be exaggerated by stress, by mental stress, by not external things, but by what people are doing in their head. I have had many adults. I'm not against medicine for ADHD, just the opposite. If a person needs that in order to be able to allow their mind to quiet down so they can listen to Sid, read Sid's books, listen to somebody to your program, to be involved and really hear something, anything, that's fine. But the most important thing is going to be for them then to learn how to be like Einstein and to swim in silence by not paying attention to that very rapid personal thought system. They have the same place of silence that's inside of every human being. And I actually have one man who did a program with Linda and I, and then he watched The Great Illusion from the Long Beach videos twice through, and he realized after the second time through, I will never have to take another pill for my ADHD. He was in his mid-40s, and it had made it possible for him to make it with his family and with his work. And he suddenly saw with clarity. Now, most people, it's not that quickly, but I had many people that as their understanding of the principles deepened, they would come back to me and say, you need to lower my medicine. You need to lower my ADHD medicine. And eventually, many of them literally did not need it. Again, there's no should. But so I guess the big thing is not to pathologize ADHD. It's a different processor. But without understanding, it can cause considerable problems to where children, I'll tell you what happens usually is they present to psychiatry with anxiety disorders and depression. Because if you're constantly failing and feeling overwhelmed, you get more discouraged, more depressed. I had 2 young people whose parents were professors at the university in the town where I published, and they, when they got to me, they both had suicide dates set. They both had severe ADHD. Their parents refused to put them on medicine. And not only that, they had counted the days till the last day in high school, and both of them, the parents had told them, if you don't go on to college, you're on your own. You will get no support from me or my father, or your father or the mother. And they literally had suicide dates set because they had been gutting it out one day at a time. I remember one of my adopted daughters crying in my arms of my late wife, saying, "Mommy, please don't make me go to school. please don't make me go to school, because it's hard to go to a place that you feel like you're failing every day. But there is hope. I want you to know that. There is hope with understanding. And some of the programs that are available, especially Krista Campsell and Kathy Emerson. Krista Campsell was with Sid in the early days. And the Guide Inside, are you familiar with their work, Amir? The
Yes.
Guide Inside?
Yep.
And they have that for middle, there's a lot of children with ADHD that have benefited from that program, the Guide Inside, and those can be available on Amazon.
Beautiful. Are you up for a couple more questions?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, this is a good one. We were talking about the delusion of the woman with the Virgin Mary who saved 4 people.
Right.
She so
I'm going to just look and see what my next schedule is, just so I don't not do it. Let's see here.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. No, I'm good. What time is it? Yeah. No, I'm good. Okay.
Monique asks, Bill talks about both in terms of the woman whose delusions of being the Virgin Mary saved 4 people, and the 104-degree temperature was the body's wisdom. In regard to the former, people have murdered people because of similar delusions, and for the latter, it is our own immune systems that are killing us with the coronavirus, literally. So can you talk about how this is also wisdom of mind? In other words, the same thing that's becoming a gift is the same, thing that causes a delusion for someone to hurt someone else or infect us with a coronavirus or other viruses.
That's true. Well, it's trying to me, the delusions are trying to wake people up. They're trying to get people to help. They're trying to keep people alive until help comes. For instance, I had one man who went into a full-blown manic episode, and because he felt he had failed, he was actually people that have manic, and again, this is going to be in the course, and I can't give it full time right now, but he really had felt he had failed his family financially, and it had gotten to such a low point that his solution to that was to kill his wife that he loved, to kill his 2 children, his 2 boys that he loved, and then himself. And fortunately, he flipped into a manic episode, a full-blown manic episode. And when you're running around in the middle of the street or starting fires or running around with no clothes on, or what things that people do when they get into a manic episode, you get the cavalry involved. You get help. And so he got help, and it's a beautiful story that I don't have time to tell. But that manic episode saved 4 people's lives. Now, you're right. If there aren't people around them, the beauty that's going to happen, there's going to be more people around that's going to catch. First of all, people are going to catch things earlier before they go over the cliff. There was just a really sad thing in Australia where this wonderful, incredible rugby player that had led New Zealand to a couple of World Cup championships killed his 31-year-old wife, and then his 3 little baby children, and then killed himself. And your heart just goes out. If somebody would have been around them, if he would have had a chance to learn this, and so there's going to be more people that are going to catch the alarm system soon enough before they go over the cliff. And that's just the evolution. We're not feeding. We still have professional football, and we still have this fighting where people are fighting in cages. But we're not like the Colosseum. We're not feeding the Christians to the lions, and we don't have gladiators fighting to the death. So there's an evolution of consciousness that's occurring. Now we want to see whatever's behind life could either take away our free will and we'd all be robots, or it can do its best to wake us up and to let us evolve. And I think that's what's happening. I think more people are evolving. You know, Denmark recently, they in Denmark, they wrote a book and published it, and I think it won a literary award. Right now it's only in Danish. And it has 15 transformational stories of people who had been labeled with all kinds of psychiatric diagnoses and things that are now living a wonderful, wonderful lives with wonderful relationships. And I thought, wow, what if the 45 countries that were touched by this recent global thing from 3PGC or from Ticken, what if those 45 countries contacted the Denmark people and found out how to start accumulating stories of transformation from their own country, and you had 40 countries that had 15 to 20 stories of transformation published, and you took those 40 books, Amir, and you delivered them to the World Health Organization. I think there'll be some billionaires, even after this pandemic, that would say, wow, this deserves, here's $50 million. I think Gates would. I think Buffett would. I think other people would around the world. There might even be a Russian oligarch that somebody would say, take $50 million and research this. This deserves to be researched. And that's not impossible that could happen. And it wouldn't have to take 30 years. It could happen in 2 years, 18 months. Who knows? So, you know, the people are, we're all going to die. Hell, I'm 77. I'm using my best. I'm going to be 78 in a couple of months. I could die, but death to me is not the end of the world for me. It's just a transition back, coming back home to the formless world, which I don't know exactly what that's like. But when I look at the beauty of the world, and I see that there's even a place in Sweden where some of my ancestors came from, that they have a place that has 150 different kinds of roses. When I look around at the beauty that's in the world, I go, if there's this much beauty in the form, how much more beauty is there in the formless? So to me, death is not, it's not, I mean, while we're here, I'm going to live wisely and lovingly as much as I can until my last breath, but I'm not going to live in fear of dying. And what's true is the more that there are people at peace, I've seen something that said that we are built as human beings to live to an average of about 115 years. Well, that's not 900, but we're living an average of what, 75? That I think there's more, the evolution, as evolution continues in understanding, we're going to naturally live a little bit longer. But again, the important thing is not the length of our life, it's the quality of our life. And how much of love and understanding there is in the lives of the people. So much of from the world study of 195 countries of morbidity and mortality that was published in 2016 in multiple articles in Lancet in the UK, it showed that sadly the vast majority of the increase in people's living time has been, the vast majority of it has been spent in disability, especially depression and neck and back pain. So we're evolving. We're evolving as fastly as we can see evolve.
Well, Bill,
I'm fine with a little more if you are.
well, so I do want to know a little bit. I think your program, I did it a few times back ago, and you're running it again. I do want you to talk a little bit about that. Why now? Why? I mean, what is this program? For those that don't know what the program's about, and I do want to talk a little bit about it, or if you're okay to talk about it.
Yeah. You know, and it's been in evolution, Amir. and it's called The Mind with a capital M, small b, 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 c, the mind, brain, body, behavior connection. Why understanding universal principles changes everything. And here's some of the objectives that we have for it. Diagnostic labels are a description of where a person is, but never of who they are. There is one cause and one cure to all mental suffering. There are two thought systems, the divine thought system and the personal thought system. These are objectives that people will be able to discuss this with anybody. And like I said, what's evolved is I'm going to, each week, there's going to be 4 24 to 25-minute lectures with video, with slides that people can take those slides. We'll give those slides to anybody, so everybody can take those slides. They don't have to say where they came from. They can if they want to, and use them to communicate with other professionals to share this, the hope. Our feeling level is a barometer of our thinking. Anyway, I won't go through these 23 or 24, but it's going to be about, the more that we understand that these are universal principles, the more people are at peace. They're going to live in a nicer feeling level, and they're going to act better, and they're going to be in better physical health for as long as they can be. Now, we're all going to die of something, but I've had 2 friends who literally contracted Lou Gehrig's disease that has an average length of survival of 23 months. Both of them lived over 8 years. And a great part of it was both of them were not in, I'm sure they went in and out of it, but the vast majority of the time, neither one of them were in resistance to what they were experiencing. And so they were grateful for each moment that they had. And as a result, they had a lot more beautiful moments. So I think it's going to be exciting. I feel like I woke up last night in the middle of the night, and I wrote like 4 pages of stuff that was coming to me. I'm not Einstein, but I do feel at times when I have the courage to go to silence, that truth does come to me. And this course is not, to the degree, it's not fully written yet, but it's being written. But I really feel like I'm not writing it. Like I'm conveying what's being passed on to me in 3x5 cards, if you will. So I think it will be, a meaningful course for people. And again, it's not about me having wisdom that anybody else doesn't have, but just like somebody who's been a forest ranger in the forest, I've lived long enough that maybe I understand a little bit about the forest, and I'm able to point out to people sooner rather than later to the signs that you're lost and how to get back to the main camp, how to get back home when you do get lost. Some people have heard me say this silly Far Side cartoon, but I'm going to say it again. So these 2 pilots are did people know the Far Side cartoon? Gary Larson. Anyway, you can look it up, but they're really kind of far out. I actually like I've got a couple of books that of the ones that the newspapers refuse to publish. And I kind of think they're funnier than even the ones that were published myself, but that's my 6th sense of humor. But so the 2 pilots are looking out of their 747, and there's a mountain goat. And one of the pilots turns to the other and says, "Boy, you usually don't see goats up this high." Now, Amir, are you with me here?
I was sending the link to the.
Okay. So the guy says, the pilot says, "You usually don't see mountain goats up this high." Well, 2 seconds later, of course, they crash into the mountain. Fiona just saw that. But yeah, hi Fiona. So So people say, why in the hell do you think that's so funny? Well, I don't think it's funny, but I think it's relevant, because until I met Mr. Banks, and it wasn't that I never crashed after that, but the crashes were survivable. And before I met Mr. Banks, I did not know that I was off glide path until I crashed into the mountain, until I completely destroyed a relationship, until I did something completely outside my own moral code, until I was flat on my back with a kidney stone or with a back spasms or uncontrolled pain somewhere in my body, chronic pain. I wasn't aware of the alarm systems, of the love letters that I was being given. And I didn't know that I was the divine thought system. So I kept going to my analytical personal thought system to try to figure out what to do. So if we can just even bring a growing awareness that we are this divine thought system, and that we can learn, like Einstein, to stop thinking, to swim in silence, and the truth will come to us. So that's what the course is going to be about. But it's also going to be about showing, trying to use even the definitions of words so people don't feel. I see so many people in the principles that are afraid to talk to industry or to talk to people and talk about the spiritual. And all the spiritual, the word spiritual, if you look it up in the dictionary, it means without form. And even the Greeks, 2,000 years ago, they knew psychosomatic. They knew that there was a formless aspect of being human, and there was the body. And like Sid says, some people think the inside is God and the outside is the body. And I'm here to tell you, it's the same energy in a different disguise. And the more people start seeing the oneness, the more life gets really simple and really joyful, regardless of circumstances. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to go through things. And it's not about judging yourself if you're experiencing some anxiety these days. To the degree you can just go with it and not be in resistance to it, you're being given an opportunity to go through a few more of those doors of understanding the principle, the nature of the principles that Sid talks about.
Bill, I got my attention moved away. I was getting so many messages saying this was so timely, this was so kind, and I did put the link on here. I'm going to put the link to your program in the replay, and I do want to leave it with one last bit. I have a neighbor who is a ER nurse, and was asking how's she doing, and I thought she was going to be frantic, and she did mention, I'm too busy helping people to be concerned about my own state of mind. And I thought that was so brilliant.
Or my own, or my own physical well-being.
Yeah, that's right. And
she's on the line.
So there are people out there that in this pandemic, they're still there for service. They are still there for the love of other people and themselves and their families. So we're gonna get through this, and I think that with what you're with more understanding, this is the time. This is a great critical time for us to really put the rubber in the road, so to speak, and say, look, this is a time to be connected. This is a time to look within. This is a time to find that wisdom more than ever. And thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
Honestly, this was an incredible conversation. Thank you for everybody that joined us today. And,
yeah, thank you.
And this will be back up. And again, if needed, at some point, if you'd be open to getting on a call again with us at some point, we'd love that. I will have the recording up, and I will have the link to the program. I know many of you guys are asking. I will have that, I promise, and I'll put it in the Facebook group right now when we close. So Bill, from the bottom of my heart, thank you again for joining us. And we'll see everybody soon.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye, you guys. Thank you.
And can I say one last thing,
Yes,
Amir?
of course.
If people look at the course, and I know it could be a lot of people, but if people look at the course and they really want it, but because of things that are happening, it will be a hardship. If they send to Terry, get a quiet reflection, and they send to Terry and they say, Terry, in 2 payments or whatever, this is what I could pay for the course. I can't pay for the whole course. I'm going to tell Terry to accept whatever that is for people. Whatever it is.
All right.
And don't lay shoulds on yourself. I mean that. But, if in a quiet moment you feel this is what would be not only fair, but this is what would work for me, and I acknowledge the value, but I also am at a state where, and maybe I'll pay the rest forward later, not to Bill, but to my favorite charity, to the homeless, to whatever else. I want to have people where they are get what they need. So I mean that, and I'm going to send an email to Terry right away.
Awesome, incredible, Bill. You're incredible. Thank you, and I will again. This will be replayed up today, and again, thank you everyone for joining, and have a blessed day, everybody. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. And as far as any names that you call me, it takes one to know one.
Oh, I'll take that. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. You're the best, man.
Take
I
care.
love you, buddy. Thank you. Take care.
Okay,
Speak soon, everyone.
Bye. Bye-bye.